Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Brian's Logic, Neil, Sleeping Warrior, The Adam Meakin, 10th Man, and a shout out immediately to James Mays, who says, welcome to Flat Earth Debate, folks. Morning to the panel and QE, and morning to all of the good people in Discord and Arwin who just joined late. Welcome, one and all.
Morning, morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hello, good afternoon.
Anthony is here as well. I don't know the
Yo, yo.
Hello, hello. It's good to have you all. I'm glad you're all enthusiastic. Good to see. Any evidence of physical geometric sphere edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature?
No, but we can
Mathematical
calculate it into existence.
Mathematical evidence.
Well,
Physical.
I have three pilots. One of them is Blue Marble Science, who's claiming that what I say, which is information concerning flights and how airplanes fly, they're basically stating that what I'm saying, that comes directly from NASA, Lockheed Martin, everyone says the exact same thing, that I'm wrong. Even though all the official sources state that you can't have lift without thrust, and the lift causes the nose of the plane to tilt up the way. But I'm wrong, according to all. Three pilots, one of them is Blue Marble Science, three commercial pilots. So, according to them, if they hold a constant altitude and fly with their nose above horizontal, that means that they're correcting for the curvature that they would have to correct for if they were flying over a sphere Earth. And the fact that I'm saying, the fact that I'm saying that they are holding an altitude and flying with their nose above horizontal and flying in a horizontal line means that what they're saying, which is exactly the same thing, is right. What I'm saying is wrong, and that means they're flying around a curved surface, and I'm wrong because of reasons. Well,
So, as far as I understand it, and correct me where I get this wrong, because I don't profess to know anything about flying a plane. When you pull back on the yoke, that changes the rudder or whatever it is, the fins on the back of the plane, what they call elevators. It changes the elevators on the tail. Now, as I understand it, and I might have this wrong, but you can change the pitch of the plane whilst maintaining your elevation. Is that true or not true?
Well, you can raise in elevation with the nose up. Or sorry, you can drop in elevation with the nose above horizontal, or you can bring the nose below horizontal and raise. But as far as flying, like, you can change the pitch of the aircraft, but the pitch, like what you're going into there is technicals that you don't need to go into, because if you add more thrust, that creates more lift, and the more lift creates more tilt of the nose. That's why the nose is always above horizontal. So if you add more thrust, it creates more lift, which is a pressure differential. That's another thing. I'm told that the pressure differential, where high pressure is trying to go to low, which is creating the lift, I'm told that's not entropy. I keep being told that. I mean, that has not part of the entropy description, supposedly. But anyway, if you add more thrust, right, that creates more lift, and the more lift creates more tilt of the nose. Now you can change the pitch. I mean, if they want to take off, they use the other factors they have to basically make sure the nose goes up and the tail goes down for takeoff. But I mean, you like what that is kind of like not a mute point, but it's kind of slightly separate, because what I'm talking about is just the basics of lift and what it causes. Lift causes the nose. Thrust causes lift. Lift causes tilt. You know, so you can't. It's impossible, because they fly in a horizontal line with their nose slightly above horizontal. So it's impossible to fly around a curved surface. Their only claim is that they hold an altitude. So what? If that altitude is equal around the surface of a globe, then you will have to correct constantly for the curvature. Not just drop, but curvature.
So does this not reduce down to the argument over what is flying level, being a level curve or a level straight line?
Well, I cover this.
Can't be a level curve.
Yes,
did a
yes, please, Adam. I've
presentation
got you
many
presented.
months ago.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll do my best to bumble through. I've not read this in a long time, but I obviously asked the same question a while ago. How does a plane behave in level flight is the first thing. And the first thing you consider is, look, there's the plane. You can see that's the familiar angle. The pitch of the plane is one thing, look, but the direction of travel of the plane is the yellow line. And this is what's called straight and level flight. Straight and level flight is kind of, let me switch the slide. There we go. It's achieved generally, and when I did this, it wasn't these little planes I was researching. It was a passenger plane. So what I then did, the data analysis with an accelerometer on. But straight and level flight is described as generally the plane's at a 2 to 3 degree upward incline. The nose never angles down during flight. Altitude is lost generally by reducing this angle a bit or reducing speed, which decreases the upward thrust also a little bit. Basically, a slight tilt backwards is usual for normal flight. Now, I took a load of data and accelerometer data on the middle hour of a 2-hour flight and recorded it, and it showed nothing. It was between 1 and 3 fluctuating, or 1 and 4. But it never went into the negative. It never went and tipped over. Now, the reason Brian's describing that is it's important, because if we're flying a plane across a level plane, everything's absolutely fine. Nothing changes. And I'm going to use the term direction of gravity, i.e. what is down. If we are flying in a straight line path vector generated by the gyroscope within the plane, then that is a straight line vector. And that's what the plane's flying on. Now, underneath the plane, on a flat plane, you'll see, look, as we go across the surface with the vector there, the vector's one way, and down at the beginning of the journey is exactly the same vector as down is in the middle of the journey and down is at the end of the journey. If we are on a curved Earth, then as we begin the journey, at the end of the journey, actually the direction of down in relation certainly to the gyroscope fixed within the plane changes. It keeps it say it will require tipping over. If you see here, look, by the time we get to the end here, we do have a different direction of down. Now this would have to be, as Brian's saying, would have to be compensated, and after 1,000 kilometers, the angle of direction of down would have changed 9 degrees. So what would that feel like to the passengers on your ball Earth as you're traveling? As they go, look, there's a different direction of down, but we've defined via the gyroscope in the plane that this is a straight line vector the plane is flying on. So it is not changing its orientation. What's changing underneath is the Earth. Now, this plays out in a number of impossible, nonsensical ways. That being, you can either feel that the passengers would be tilting back in their seat because the plane would actually start to take a realistic position, like with the yellow arrows, across the ball Earth. These are the results, but that's the point. You would have to have a forward tilt to reorientate to negate the effect of the ground reorientating itself and redefining down if you were on a ball, because that would be a consequence of traveling across a ball where down is defined in a specific way in relation to the geometry.
So what you're saying is the plane flies along a tangent straight line and it's not following the curve of the Earth.
We know the straight line is straight because it's defined by the gyroscope, within the plane stuff. So it's taking its straight line path and the vector it flies across from the gyroscope. That's what maintains it. It's not drawing or referencing the Earth as any part for its flight other than altitude. But in terms of its position, that's defined by the gyroscope. That's why they set them up, isn't it?
Yeah,
So-
sorry, Adam, I go after you.
How would Wolfie respond to this in his, remove his bravado out of it? What would he say?
There isn't anything he could say. It's a fact. That the reason my video is getting such negativity and so many views, because I have way more views than I have subscribers on this video. I normally have, and most of the time it's from other borders. But the reason I'm getting such negativity is because what I'm doing, like what Adam did, was brilliant. He had demonstrations of how the direction of down doesn't change and it would have to change. What I'm doing is like taking a little section of what Adam did, and I'm just focusing on the fact that lift causes the nose to tilt up. And the more thrust, the more lift, the more tilt. And they have to do that to fly horizontal, just to fly horizontal. So the only way for them to fly around a curved surface and fly, to fly around a curved surface that's falling away from you at magnitudes underneath, there is no way that a plane would ever be designed to fly as it is and be successful. It can't. To do what it does, which is to fly horizontal with its nose above horizontal, for it to always have to fly that way, as that's the way it's designed, and that's what it does, and that's how lift is generated and how it's maintained. And to do that means that it's an absolute impossibility to fly around a curved surface that's falling away underneath you. And the main thing I've noticed in my comments, especially from the three pilots, Blue Marble Science and the other two, is no one has addressed my argument. Nobody. They won't even state my argument. They jump on everything and anything. I said this about that. It's not really entropy. All this kind of rubbish. And I'm going into nonsense about how entropy is just a description, and that I have to deal with a lot of red herring arguments. But nobody is addressing my argument because they can't. And Wolfie hasn't even come over. I think Blue Marble Science might be making a video on it. I don't know. But Wolfie hasn't even come over to say anything. And Wolfie would normally come in and just attack my videos at random, but now he has nothing to say. All I'm getting is a force of gravity, right? And when I challenge that, I get nothing. Nothing, I should say. Sorry. So there's no way around it. Like Wolfie would have nothing to say to what Adam said. All Wolfie could do was call Adam. No offense, Adam, but he would just say, "You're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about," and that'd be the best he could do. Just an attack, a personal attack.
I've gave this presentation, Brian, to two sets of pilots. One was, it was quite weird. I was taking a flight to Italy, and I'm kind of finishing it up, and there was a flight enthusiasts club, and I'm a bit more aggressive flat earther back then. Go flat smacking people for no reason. So I've presented it to them, and they're like, "Whoa," that kind of response. But the actual pilot that's taking them up was like, "Might have a point there, lad." And then the second time was actually on a flight. I always get extra leg room, and the seats are in threes. So I'm sat with the extra leg room, and the bloke next to me is a pilot. So I'm just chatting to him. He's flying over to pick up a flight the other side. So I said, would you mind looking at this? And he went through it, and he says, I haven't got an answer. So I think I would argue that honest pilots say that. Bloody hell, that's actually profound. I've never thought of that, and I don't have an answer for it.
And I bet you that's why Wolfie has never addressed you on this, because all he can do is personally attack you, because they have to do that. It's a character assassination, because it's either that or honesty.
2018, Brian, this has been out since, and it's never been attacked or challenged. It's just sat and been ignored.
Yeah, it's absolutely epic.
They need drop, and they haven't got any. That's the bottom line. They need the ground to drop away from the plane, and it doesn't. It's just that simple.
Well, they need even more than that, Nathan, because to drop, as Adam stated before, remember when Adam done this presentation before, the drop is only one part, because that will only deal with altitude. Then there's the curvature, which means they can drop altitude with the nose above horizontal, but they can't go around curvature like that.
Right, they've got to rotate the axis of the plane around the curvature that's not existent by way of a drop that they're not having to negate. So yeah, I understand entirely. You two, it's been a great conversation. Thank you, both of you.
Thanks,
Hey,
Adam.
Nathan, can I chime in on that? You know what a GE EV is?
You'll have to tell me no.
It's a ground effect vehicle. There's many others. There's a Luna class Ukrainoplane. It's a plane that hovers across the surface of the water. So one of them states that the payload is like 1,000 kilograms, and it cruises up to about 90 knots with a range of 250 nautical miles.
Okay, I'm aware of boats that can get up fast enough to get on. I've forgotten the term for it, but where they've got a very small amount of the boat actually touching the water, up on the. They call it. There's a term for it. I don't want to get it wrong.
Hydroplaning.
I thought it was hydroplaning, but I thought that's when you go through a puddle and your tires log up. But if it is called hydroplaning, then
I
yeah.
ain't seen that. No.
No, it's an actual plane. It's a plane.
I've seen that. I've seen that Extrana plane. They take advantage of lift, but there's a certain point where they basically stay. Is it like 25 foot or something, or 40 foot above the water, and they just fly in a straight line? It was the Russians built it, I think. They just fly in a straight line across water.
Over the Baltics and that, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
They
Okay,
couldn't use the
perfect.
sea. They had
That's
to
enough.
use the.
Okay, it's not necessary to go through the technical jargon in this regard.
All right.
You want to make your point, whoever it was that brought it up from Discord, I didn't see.
Yeah, it was me. So I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so 250 nautical miles. That's about roughly 280 miles. I'm trying to figure out how much curvature they would have to adjust for. I mean, they're skimming across the surface of the water.
Right, they're not. That's the answer. But there's a big problem in terms of what they should be experiencing and aren't. And it's tied in perfectly. It's just closer to the water in this example than a jet with Adam's example. But yeah, exactly. Good point.
It's 0.01. So it's not curvature they're experiencing. It's angular realignment of which way down the vector is going that they should have to compensate. You can compensate for the height easily. As I say, just trim a little bit of speed off and you'll lose thrust and you'll decrease in altitude, so you could affect the drop without this, but it's the angular change. And that, so what was the distance you said?
About the range is about 250 nautical miles and about at 90 knots.
What's that, 300 miles or 280 miles or something? Let's call it
280
miles. 250 miles. So they would actually have to account for 3.5 degrees. And that's the thing that would be significant to the aeroplane, that would require realignment and adjustment. Otherwise, everything falls apart. All the all of the thrust calculations fall apart because down's in a different direction. The supposed atmosphere's curve, so the wind's going in a different direction, but that vector's still been maintained, and therefore that angle's been generated.
To bring it back to Brian's point, the lift that's required to be generated requires a certain angle of the craft, whatever it may be, wherever it may be. And Adam's point to add to that is that it's going to have to rotate round at least a couple of degrees, but that's not conducive with the actual dynamics of flying. They're not doing that at any point, regardless of the distance, be it over a short stretch, which is only a few, however high above water, or in a jet. They're not doing that. They're not rotating the plane around an alleged curvature that's taken place beneath the flight to reorientate themselves against that position on a sphere. They're not doing that, regardless of whether they claim they're accounting for a drop that isn't occurring. That's Adam's point tied into Brian's point.
Well, it's actually
really sucks is
I'll go after you. Like, go on.
no, I was just gonna say what really sucks is like this is taking my mind to, well, what about thrust in space, right? And then I was like, oh, that's right. They'll just say there's some kind of weightlessness, which is why this is possible. And then, you know, some other mechanic. And I'm like, well, that's the trick, that without this word gravity, there would be weightlessness. And there's like, so it doesn't even allow you to think about a real situation where you'd have this heavy ass rocket that's obviously way denser than no medium. And then it'd never get a chance to ever do anything in no medium, thrust, no nothing. We think about that because we're like, oh yeah, without the earth or the mass, everything is weightless anyway.
Yeah, but you're arguing in Narnia.
Correct, Neil.
Well,
No, that's what I'm saying. We have, that's what I'm saying. They've hijacked our thinking and saying, well, if it's not gravity, then you're forced to think about a world with weightlessness, which you have to create the reason that things would stick to the floor.
But that's gravity as a force, which is that's the problem they have, because gravity as a force is out of date since 1915. Whereas that's not theory of general relativity. So they're screwed with that anyway. But what I was going to say just before that point, before the point is lost, we'll come back to what Elijah's talking about, because that's also interesting. Is one of the things that one of the pilots was asking me is the pilot kept on saying to me, according to you, we'd have to keep on adding thrust. Where would we get all the energy? Right? And I knew what he was doing.
Right.
It was a couple of days of this. And what he was doing was begging the question that for me to say that the plane is flying straight would mean that it's constantly gaining altitude on the globe, because it wouldn't be following the curvature. And I said, and I was asked by another guy who came in who kind of
Hold on, Brian. Can you hold that thought? Because I want to. Can you hold on to the next thought if I expand on what you've just said? So what Brian's saying is, there's a begging the question fallacy in place where the justification is, I'm maintaining my altitude above a spherical surface, and your argument now gets repositioned to, because it doesn't automatically beg the question of maintaining altitude above a spherical surface, it would be ascending off it, and it isn't. So it's introducing a begging the question fallacy and getting you to defend the alternative to begging the question by saying the alternative to it maintains its altitude above the sphere, regardless of the mechanics, would be to say it flying off into space, and it doesn't, and ask you a further step in terms of how much thrust would be required for that scenario after he begs the question. Yeah, that sounds typical. Hope you held that thought long enough to carry on from there, Brian, but yes, thank you.
They were able to calculate the
Hold on,
PE.
Owen. Go ahead, Brian.
No, that was very good, Nathan, because you said it very succinctly, exactly what I was saying. I got to the point where this other guy who was joining in with him said to me, he says, he's a fairly intellectual kind of guy. He says to me, so would you answer, would an airplane need thrust to gain in altitude? And if it took away thrust, would it drop in altitude? And I said yes. I said, of course, right? And they said, you just debunked yourself, right? I said no. You know what I mean? I didn't actually say no. I just left them off. I only disagreed with them today after about 4 days. I just left them off. They were begging the question all the way. But what they don't realise is the fact that the plane is holding a constant speed and a constant altitude, and it's not accounting for down, the change in the direction of down. And lift makes it impossible. You can't fly an airplane horizontally. You can't fly an airplane at all without lift. And lift means that the plane's nose has to be above horizontal to fly at cruising altitude for any length of time. It can't, like if you dip the nose below horizontal, it messes with things. It doesn't fly. You can do it, obviously jet fighters and everything that do it, and you can drop altitude that way, but you're just going to end up heading towards the ground. You're going to have to straighten the nose out again.
But they've been fairly crafty because they've said to gain altitude, you've got to add thrust, and therefore to descend, you've got to lose thrust. And therefore, if I assume, and this is where they're begging the question terminology comes in, that I am maintaining a level altitude, they're not actually saying maintaining my altitude above the sphere and just negotiating the drop mandatorily without me doing a thing. It just does it automatically. It just maintains level flight. Because that's what we do. We maintain level flight, and we assume that maintaining level flight is following the curvature of a sphere. Therefore, the antithesis of my begging the question is to fly off it into the space vacuum that I'm going to assume also and never mention. And when you say that I'm not descending and decelerating, losing thrust to negotiate my begging the question drop that I'm not experiencing because I'm quote-unquote maintaining level flight. Well, maintaining level flight means you're maintaining level flight, and they're supposed to be drop. So they managed to weasel in your their begging the question fallacy and negate any defence you might have about them having to have drop, because they're just claiming, I beg the question, that level flight is actually curved. It's moving around a sphere. But they just don't mention that. They don't tell you they're begging the question. You've got to spot that maintaining level flight. It's like, well, that's my argument. Yeah, they're not going over any drop. And as Adam would put it, they're not rotating to account for that either. And as Brian would say, they're nosing up the whole bloody time. So there's no drop involved in any of this, but they just beg the question and say, yeah, it's level around my sphere, I assume.
Exactly, Nathan. What they're doing is, what they're doing is they're actually, the reason I didn't address it for 4 days, I knew what it was, and I didn't address it, but I kept on getting more and more of them asking me the same question, because they were following this pilot's lead. And I didn't address it, but the reason I didn't was because I kept on saying, address my argument, because what they're doing is, it's a reverse of the proof fallacy, because they're trying to put me into how come you're not constantly adding trust. This is what they're trying to ask me, why the pilot wouldn't be constantly basically they're saying, according to you, the pilot would always have to add trust. But the real argument is, my argument is, to even just account for just drop alone, and this can only be for a part of the journey, is they have to constantly be pulling back on the power, which they don't. This doesn't happen.
Yeah, well, they're keeping you on the ball.
That's it.
Yes,
hold on, Brian. Yes, Neil, exactly. They're keeping him on the ball, so you have to ask what they mean by level. Level flight, you say? Level?
Yeah.
Right, constant altitude then. Yeah, constant altitude against my sphere. Force them to beg the question by declaration, and then laugh at them. Oh, right, so level means around a curve. That's not what level means. When you're maintaining level flight, you're not maintaining around a ball mandatorily dropping without having to account for any drop, and reversing the burden of proof and telling me that I've got to justify why you're not reducing the thrust to not account for the fact that it's not dropping, because level means it's dropping automatically. It's like, yeah, they convolute it in such a way that you've got to defend something you haven't actually claimed. What, I've suddenly in a position where I've got to defend a claim that you'd be accelerating off into a space vacuum? That's not my claim. Level flight. Well, that's level. Where's the drop? Why aren't you rotating around a sphere if you travel a vast distance? None of those things get addressed. It's just, why aren't we accelerating into space then? You've debunked yourself. No, I haven't. Earth's flat, level flight. Level.
Yeah, but that's exactly. They're just switching the argument back onto me, and that's why I had to avoid it. I avoided it for 4 days, and today I just threw it out there. I just told them, no, you're just begging the question. Address my argument, or stop wasting my time. Because that's what was going on. All I'm getting is personal attack and people not addressing my argument. and people trying to reverse the argument, because the argument is very simple. The aerodynamics of airplane flight proves that the airplane needs lift, and lift causes the nose to tilt above horizontal, just for the plane to fly horizontally. For the plane to fly in a horizontal manner, it has to have the nose above horizontal. That means where is the curvature and drop accounted for? It's not.
Well, that's why I never liked that argument when they say, well, if you were on a sphere, if you just kept flying, you'd fly right into space. No, because then you're right on the ball Earth with them.
And it's on the front page, isn't it, Brian, right? It's on the front cover. What is level flight? When you're maintaining level flight, what is that? Well, they've pied the dirty detail in the title. So level flight, you're maintaining level.
Right, to tell Brian back to that, if I may, the GEV, right? In the description, it says typically it is designed to hover over a level surface, usually over the sea, by making use of ground effect, the aerodynamic interfraction between the moving wing and the surfaces below. Some models can operate over any flat area, such as frozen lakes or flat plains similar to a hovercraft.
Exactly. Yeah, they use the same exact instrumentation as an airplane. The same instrumentation. Like any of them that would, even if someone like the Ectranaplan or whatever it was that was around some years ago, like that wouldn't have had, let's say, a ring laser gyroscope, but it had all the other stuff. You know what I mean? It had gyros, you know, all the normal stuff. You know, I wouldn't have had maybe an accelerometer, but what's the difference? I mean, one of my more recent videos is called Horizontal Mean Sea Level, and that got a huge amount of hate from the ballers because I pointed out what mean sea level was, and I showed how it's just an average in different places. And mean sea level for me and for someone else is not the same place. It's not the same thing. It depends on the tides. And I showed what it all was. And it's only a very simple video, but it takes away what they want to believe is level. Because if you took away the definition in what's that online dictionary that QE often refers to, there's one of the dictionaries online, and it refers to
Merriam-Webster.
Merriam-Webster. Way down the page, it says, I can't remember verbatim. It's like level is conforming to the sphere, a curve, all the curve of the earth or something like that. And it's just one, and then it contradicts itself above it or below it. It contradicts itself. So it's a nonsense. But without that, they actually have no other definition anywhere officially on the internet without that one little bit that's way down the page that states anything about level having anything to do with the center of a sphere. And if you look into what mean sea level is, that is nothing to do with the center of a sphere. All elevations are taken off of mean sea level, the local mean sea level, which is different everywhere because tidal effects are different everywhere. So the whole it's all these different averages. Then there's an average world mean sea level, but so it's all just a load of averages. That's all it is. There's none of it has anything to do with the center of a sphere. Nothing. And that's why surveying take all their elevations off a mean sea level, local mean sea level. They don't take anything from the center of a sphere, of an oblate spheroid. Sorry.
I just got a super chat from Godzilla37. It says the ballers have run from their model for years now and are still not in space. They should be there soon. Thank you very much for the super chat, Godzilla37.
But they actually are in space because that's what they're talking about a lot lately. When you go there, they're talking about space and astronauts and where they're going. That they got a rover on Mars with a helicopter. Come on.
I heard the word curvature used. How would we measure curvature?
Well, we're waiting to hear that. We're waiting to hear how they supposedly measure it with years, but they never did. They only show how they measure flat, and then convert mathematically to globe. They start off with a pre-assumption. No, they just start off with a pre-assumption, John. The zenith the surveyor takes is brought to the center of an oblate spheroid WGS80 globe mathematical
that's the assumption.
Yeah,
that is the assumption. Yeah. Zenith. Well, when they say zenith, they're presupposing that zenith, that's a plumb line, if you like, going straight through your head. that continues along the radius to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. That's what their zenith is. So they take a zenith and they go, right, okay, here where I stand, here's my zenith, right? Let's look up in this datum where that is. Now, if it's a North Pole centred datum, you'll be pointing off here in England at whatever, how many degrees are we off? I don't know what degree we are. I should really know this. It's terrible, really. Anyway, pointing off at, let's just call it 45 degrees. I'm somewhere wherever 45 degrees is on a presupposed spherical datum. And that means that I'm sticking down at that angle on that particular part of the Earth. Now, obviously, because it's, for them, only referenced from the top, the datum doesn't, but you're referencing it from you being on the top. That's how gravity works, according to them. So you've got all of these assumptions in place. You take your zenith, and then you look it up on a sphere datum. And once you've done that, you then apply the actual measurements using Euclidean maths. So you're measuring it flat. Now that flat measurement you take after you've assumed a zenith to a presupposed spherical Earth centre is going to be called a tangent. That'd be its tangent to the sphere, plane, the surface you're actually measuring. So the geodetic surveyors are going to measure a tangent plane. Plane, because it's flat, tangent because they're presupposed to spherical Earth.
Well, I was going to say, if the horizon's claimed to be refracted, then how can you have a tangent that doesn't make sense?
You can't. We've debunked all of this with the black swan. They require a physical geometric tangent point to be the edge of your view into the distance. So if you were to hold up a basketball and you were an ant a millimetre above it, as you looked out, what you'd see is the edge of the basketball blocking things that were beyond the edge of the basketball. That would be your view. That would be a geometric tangent point horizon for the ant on a basketball. Now, for us to be on a bigger equivalent of that basketball, we too would have a physical geometric tangent point horizon like the ant on a basketball. It would be a physical limitation to our view into the distance based on their claim we're on a sphere 3959 in radius. And if we were on a sphere radius 3959, then every distance to that geometric limitation, tangent point horizon, could be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. That is the geometric limitation based on you being on a sphere. Now, when we demonstrate that the limitation to our view, that would be the horizon, is beyond that which would be experienced by an ant on a basketball as a physical geometric sphere edge, then you can rule out us having a geometric physical limitation in the form of a horizon, i.e., or ergo, the horizon is not the edge of a sphere blocking our view. We don't have a tangent point for a horizon. It cannot be used to measure sphere. Every assumption of a sphere is based on that predication that you can measure its geometry. And you cannot. The horizon is not the edge of a sphere. The horizon is not a tangent point from a sphere to derive any geometric R values from. We do not live on a sphere. The Earth is obviously and observably and measurably flat.
Well, yeah, that's what I was getting to. There's no R value. That's no way to measure it. But it doesn't exist.
No.
Does that mean we've finally answered one housekeeping question then?
Well, we've only asked one so far on this show. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curvature? And the answer is no.
Next.
That would be my fault.
No, that's all right, Brian. I've taken a slightly different stance with the housekeeping questions, which is previously I've said, no, we've got to rattle our way through them so that any newbies that come... We're not a newbie show, are we? Anybody who's recently subscribed and you're under the misapprehension that you can come here as a newbie and go, yeah, I get it. There's going to be stuff that goes over your head. The longer you stay tuned... This is me encouraging people to stay tuned, right? Stay tuned, because there's more to discover as you stay tuned. But it is true, you know, we do get repetitive because this stuff doesn't necessarily sink in the first time you hear it, especially if you're talking about what we were discussing in the pre-show, functional sequence specified complexity. When you come to subjects like that, you're going to need it 10 times So yeah, but it's not base level stuff. Paradigm changes from heliocentric to flat, those are dealt with by people like Mark Sargent, and I'm not knocking him in any way or belittling that process. If anything, it's far more popular than what we do here at the tip of the spear. So, you know, when it comes to housekeeping, I'd rather Brian extensively detailed a circumstance in regards to the physical geometric sphere edge horizon, the drop that would be assumed in terms of the flights, the angle of attack of the plane, the lack of rotation that Adam's detailed since 2016. All of these things are worth discussing for anybody who's come here that's not necessarily a newbie. And I would assume that most of the audience aren't, actually. So I think they've, you know, based on the amount of people that have recently subscribed, thanks to Taboo Conspiracy, Russian Vids, Mark Sargent himself, and everyone else who's got smaller channels like Paula, like Brian, like Flatsoid, like even Chemo. All of those people have bought people who are aware of this subject. They wouldn't be on those channels if they weren't. So they're going to enjoy these slightly more advanced discussions that you're exploring with the fundies. And honest, Brian, say I didn't respond to their begging the question fallacy for 3 or 4 days. You know, it's like, why disclaim that other than to say that you're processing this stuff in real time and dealing with a load of what you've actually detailed, which is a whole bunch of people who've got behind the grand master of this argument and gone, detail why you're not increasing thrust, detail why you're not increasing thrust. You're just detailing, you are now contextually now just detailing how they have approached this as the sheep that they are. They follow the master right through the fence or through the gate, and that's all they're doing. Meanwhile, you've taken your time, you've not responded, you've not bit the bait, and then just accepted for what it is. The argument is a begging the question fallacy. It's been repossessioned with a burden of proof reversal fallacy for you to justify something that stands with their begging the question fallacy in place when you answer their request. It's totally unreasonable when you pull it apart. But when you've got a whole barrage of fundy trolls telling you that you've got to answer this question that's positioned with a begging the question fallacy, it seems like you should just debate every one of them in your comment section. Spend hours and hours and hours going through this process of begging the question with them and answering their unreasonable request within their begging the question. Just you'd go nuts, wouldn't you, Brian?
Well, you would, Nathan. You see, there's a bigger tactic going on here. This is for even people who might be new listening to the show. There's a bigger tactic going on here because my video is actually called "Calling Out Wolfie 6020." I can't remember. There's an extra part to it, but that's the basics of it. I'm calling out Wolfie 6020 because Wolfie 6020 has trolled us and abused us. Basically, he's basically was very condescending to us since he turned up in 2016. I think that's 5 years of a commercial pilot who's been attacking us. Basically, now I'm calling him out on this very, very simple thing to do with airplane flight or to do with flight and lift. It's a very, very simple thing, but it's very, very honest. Anyone can understand it. Anyone can look it up, and it's stated by NASA, Lockheed Martin, everyone. Everyone states this is the way airplanes fly. So the point of the. Sorry?
All right, I was going to say I'll go out on a limb and say this isn't the first time. I'm going to ask for support from Sleeping Warrior and Adam in this regard, because correct me if I'm wrong, Adam. When this was presented prior, we were. And I say we, Sleeping Warrior and I, were goading people into baiting, or how did Anthony, poking the bear in a more efficient manner. And I vaguely remember this being one of those examples that Anthony specifically directed at Wolfie20 following one of your presentations of it, and you've done it half a dozen times. Chances are Sleeping Warrior sloped away. We'll see if Adam's still around. Hey, Adam.
Oh, man. Yeah, like I said, it's been out there, and yeah, and as you said, I think Tony did the bear a little bit with it, and I genuinely ask, it's out there. It's my understanding. I researched it. I read papers on how like I say commercial planes fly. I didn't not the little 2-seater things there, but actually how the plane I was going on and take the measurements, how it worked, particularly how it descends with regards to thrust. Again, you know, when you're coming down, you tilt your nose up even more, so you've got lots of upward thrust, but you can reduce the speed. You know what I mean? So that's how a plane works, and that's why it sits there. And I still wait for someone in the flat Earth and the ball Earth side to challenge it. But Like I said, I've presented it to genuine pilots face to face. You know what I mean? And not had anything other than bloody hell. And we've had not even standard ball a week attacks on it, to be honest. They don't seem to want to touch it.
Well, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It doesn't help when you've got people like Sean Hawkins that try and... Not only does he not understand the burden of proof, he flips it like... He's basically dumb. The claim is that we live on a sphere and the Earth curves. That claim needs to be substantiated, and we're saying there is no evidence for it. When it requires evidence, it's them that's got to prove their claim. It's not us that needs to debunk the assumption, and there is no benefit of the doubt given. They've got to prove their claim. And when we say, hey, there's an issue, they've got to present the evidence. It's down to them to present. You've got people on their side that are pushing not only the burden of proof reversal, but they're deliberately confusing the claim. The claim is that we live on a sphere. It's them that's got to prove it, not us that's got to disprove their story or rhetoric. They've got to prove it. We don't really have to do anything, just ask for the evidence.
Precisely. That segues nicely as we're not near the end yet, but it's middle of a live show and I've already plugged it in the pre-show. But I've just been editing that exact scenario, but with WMD versus FED, which is the title of the video. You've got somebody who's presenting a claim. It's a positive assertion. I don't really have to do anything other than say, prove your claim. Now, it doesn't matter if it's Globe Earth or WMD or anything else for that matter. If you've got a positive assertion, it's down to you. You're the bearer of the burden. That's it. You set about proving it. Or you just have somebody sat across from you going, I don't believe you. Interestingly, I was watching Friends yesterday. My wife's got well into the Friends since the reunion, and one of the episodes you've got Phoebe questioning Ross on paleontology and asking him, no, is that what he is? Is he a paleontologist?
Yeah,
paleontology. And basically she points out to him that he's got a belief system. He says, in this box is a box of scientific facts. And she pulls it apart in a very light-hearted way, gets him to question his belief and say, okay, there's a small chance that's not actually true, my little story I gave you to convince you of evolution. And when he questions it, she says, oh, God, that was so easy. Just to get you to question your belief. That's how it was left, with her telling him that just by asking a few careful questions and saying, no, I don't believe that, left him with the bit of doubt that she could leverage to say, this is a belief. Starting off as a box of scientific fact, I might add. Not science in the slightest.
Could I just finish off what I was saying a minute ago? I'm not trying to bring it back to that, just to finish what I was saying. My video is calling out Wolfie 6020 because of all the times that he has been called out and ignored it, because of all the things he has said and attacked us with, right? All these begging the question fallacies, all this nonsense like EQ mount telescopes and the eclipse and all this other rubbish, equinox, etc. I state, it's put up or shut up, Wolfie. Either bring up the evidence that shows that you account for drop and curvature of your globe Earth belief, or go away. And what's happening at the moment is I have a load of people who are basically trying to find some weakness, and that's what Wolfie will come in and attack me on. But Wolfie's sitting back watching everything, I can guarantee you, and he's waiting to come in and attack me when someone else has found some kind of a loophole. And that's all these people have been trying to do, is find loopholes. And that's how desperate they are. None of them have addressed the argument. It's all trying to get me to address their arguments, and they're begging the question fallacies and all their rubbish. And it's all reversal of what's going on, because they can't address that argument. Because it's their claim they're flying around the globe. It's their claim it is a globe, and they are never addressing that. It's always trying to put it back on us to go into their begging the question world and reverse that. We have to somehow account for all their belief. That's what it is, isn't it? It comes back to they have a belief and they won't let it go.
Can you blame them though? What else can they do when you have no arguments? I mean, what are you left with? Tactics.
Before we get into that, so you can see that video on Brian's Logic channel, which is on screen for my audience now. I haven't watched that video because I'd have given it a like and it didn't have a like, so I will check it out myself. I haven't watched this. I said I did yesterday. I must have just seen the thumbnail and not actually watched it, Brian. So I'll check it out as well. It's called Calling Out Wolfie 6020 Wing Lift, How an Aeroplane Flies. So check it out. Subscribe today to Brian's Logic if you've not done so already.
Much appreciated, Nathan.
So yeah, I don't mind. We've covered one housekeeping question.
Up, Brian, you're now on 33, so if someone could help that out.
Hopefully you'll get a few subscribers. I've gained a few new subscribers. I'm going to do a quick shout out to Boo Conspiracy, who part of his Globe Earth and Flat Earth Proof debunking series. He's up to video 6, I believe now, and video 6 was me. So he specifically asked me. I approached a lot of people, including him, to say, can you help me get to 20,000? And he, much smarter than I, got back in touch and said, well, actually, I'm producing a series about X. Can you give me Y? And I went, yes, I can indeed. So I gave it to him. He inserted it into a video, and it's essentially detailing how you can't have a sky vacuum, with a couple of people detailing on a blackboard and detailing with physical demonstration entropy increase. But check it out. That's on Taboo Conspiracy 3. And yeah, thank you very much indeed to you, Ben. Thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it. Very good video. So yeah, check out his full series. It's out. He's been releasing them. I don't know if there's more after this one. Hopefully there is. If not, great series already. There's 6 videos in that particular series. They're doing very well for him. And they're very concise, short videos. Debunking outer space, debunking gravity, debunking geometric horizons, pointing out spatial assumptions, all sorts of different things. But it's got a whole great concise series, and they're all less than about 5 minutes, maybe, or thereabouts, 2 to 5 minutes, I would say. So they're good videos to share with other people who just need a concise explanation of how something works or doesn't work. So I'm going to be sharing those videos a lot, Ben, just so you know. That's probably why I've got a few more views, because other people have done as I have, which is said, this is really good, this is really concise. I can share this with Joe Normie, and they'll get the point within 2 or 3 minutes. Brilliant work. I love it, Ben. Taboo Conspiracy, shout out to you.
Just to have Chocolate say what he said again.
Yes, I was going to go back to him. I'm on the ball. My memory's not that bad. But in terms of the tactics, just to get the segue back onto the track of the conversation with Wolfie, etc., etc. Do you want to repeat what you just said, Chocolate?
No, I said, well, I was telling Brian, well, what does he expect them to do? When you have no actual arguments, you have no evidence for your claims, what else are you left with? You're left with tactics. You're left with burden of proof reversals. You're left with begging a question. I mean, that's all you have.
So when you said that, obviously, if they were seekers of truth, if they saw that the position they held was false, they would jettison it and say, wow, I was fooled. I'm looking to see how they fooled me. But they're actually become warriors for this fallacy, and they beg the question every time they open their mouth. So it's not as if these people want to be converted when truth hits a lie. They rather hold a lie.
Just looking at Ryan's channel there, you're certainly over the target, right? It's your most popular video ever, and it's only been out 3 or 4 days. And it's got your most number of views, so you're certainly over the target, bruv.
Yeah, I've noticed that actually. It seems to be getting a lot of views, and it's such a simple, very simple video. You know, I've been attacked on by the borders because it's so simple. You know, oh, you didn't talk about this. What about angle of attack? What about trimming for altitude? All this type of nonsense.
Or tactics.
Yeah, that's it. It's just simple. I said no one keeping it simple. Oh, you said something was claimed by, you said something was caused by entropy. I think I said it was due to entropy, and maybe I did say I'm not sure. I can't remember what I said. But I said yeah. But that's all. We keep it simple. I don't want to start telling people about how entropy is just a description of blah blah blah. I don't need all that. Just I want people to be able to see it and go, yeah. And anyone who did see it, who wasn't a boarder, went, yeah, that's the end of that for airplanes. Do you know what I mean? There was nobody who saw it and was on the fence. They were either a boarder or they understood.
and if they are a baller, to get to that, I can't even remember to detail the full list of fallacies that's employed when asking you to justify why planes don't accelerate off into space when they're begging the question of level flight actually maintaining level flight above a curved surface. I can't remember all of those fallacies to detail them off in one sentence, but that was a description of what they're doing and asking you to do. You know, that requires mental processing. And at some point during that processing, you've got to, I would assume, if you're capable mentally, consider the alternative. And it's not tolerated mentally by those people. And that intolerance is pain.
Yeah, they have to character assassinate the person because they need to find something, because that's all that's been going on. And I expected it because I've dealt with it for so many years. They have to find some small thing, like I said, entropy, due to entropy. That was enough, you know, something like that, for them to jump on and say, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he can't be right, my belief still stands.
I love it.
That's what they need. You know?
You ascribe cause to entropy. You evil man. You didn't say as described by. Kick him out and hang him. You know, so what? Yeah, because of entropy. Yeah, misspeak. It's just simple misspeak. So what? Does it change your point? Did it change your point? I very highly doubt it.
It's got a name when they do that, though.
Majoring on the minors.
Yep.
Well, there was one guy called...
Well done, Neil.
Yeah, burn him at the stake. There's one guy called Jim Smith. Now he's like Agent Jim Smith from that's his avatar from the Matrix, and like he is a baller. But he asked me, he said it to me about it. I said, look, I said, entropy is just a description of phenomena we don't know the cause of. So I said, I said it as simple as possible in the video so people would understand. And I said, but it's not that I don't know that. And he went, yeah, fair enough. Do you know what I mean? He just accepted, well, that is the truth. Whereas the rest of them can't. Like, he must be a step ahead of them.
I've just read some of the comments, Brian. You've got to worry, mate, because it's not only just all had on, they're getting a little racist as well, aren't they? To be sure.
There's a little
justified.
bit of that going on. And
I think that's reasonable.
That's all
I think that's only reasonable. Sorry, Brian.
They're in their feelings.
You're not did you become a Lucky Charm?
Hey, look, we don't want any troubles.
You become a
You always measure your success by your enemies, not by your friends. So you're doing good if you got that many haters.
yeah, there's a lot of you know, it's just ramping up more and more. And what the most telling part is the very person the video is for, who normally had no hassle coming in and attacking one of my videos at any time before. The very person the video was aimed towards, I haven't heard a peek out of, would be 60-20. Because all he can do is come in and what the rest of them are doing. He can't tell me anything more than any other person could tell me.
Because he doesn't need to do anything. He sent his Agent Smiths for you. Right? That's why you even said one of them has a profile of Agent Smith. That's what they are. The little programs that pop up whenever the rhetoric or the narrative is challenged. Right? I've seen it in my face. I've seen coworkers I get along with swimmingly. And then so all of a sudden, when this topic is brought up, it's like a different person has been summoned to defend the nonsense.
Did they go all wibbly wobbly and suddenly have like fingers travelling through their skin and then they appear in a black suit and sunglasses?
Yep, all that.
Wow, they really are Agent Smiths from the Matrix. With that, though, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supply to Octopus Energy. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
what a name! What a lovely name!